Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, Thank you for coming on this beautiful, crispy day to the Institute of World Politics to enjoy yet another Kościuszko Chair annual conference. This is our eighth one. We have a spring symposium, so we put on two major events every year. And it's thanks to people like Mrs. Bridges who volunteer. Actually, everybody volunteers to come and work on Saturday as volunteers. Therefore, we'll have to make things short. Okay? We have a full program, lots of people from different places. What they have in common is that they are interested in the intermarium, that is the land between the Black and Baltic Seas. From a variety of perspectives. I always encourage private recollections. These are insightful, fun, sometimes harrowing. Nonetheless, they bring a personal dimension to scholarship. And since we're all human, it is indispensable. We must not pretend that we are robots. The intermarium is, as always, the overarching theme, and the people of it. I will be the first speaker, and then I'll introduce everybody else as one comes up to the podium. The topic of my little presentation, and I mean it's going to be a very short one, is Poland for the Poles. Who were and are Polish nationalists? This is a popular history of Christian nationalism in Poland. It's a brick of a book. I'm shilling for myself. It came out 2 weeks ago. If you should tell a leftist that Poland ought to be for the Poles, one goes ballistic. It is incendiary. That's why I insisted on the title. And let me tell you what I mean by Poland for the Poles. It all hinges upon the definition. According to the leftist perspective, Christian nationalists excluded everyone, and they purveyed a narrow, integral nationalist, ethno-nationalist vision and definition of who a Pole is. Well, I always encourage racists and integral nationalists to take a DNA test. A colleague of mine from Fletcher had a very good friend, also at Fletcher, who was a black nationalist. She's now an employee of the State Department. She took a DNA test to prove her black nationalist credentials. When the results arrived in the mail, she became like a deflated balloon, for she found out that she was 40% Japanese, and nobody ain't talking at her household. The truth is that we're all children of God. That is the pre-Enlightenment universalist vision that comes from the ancient Hebrews and then was universalized through Christianity. So I will read to you very short statements from two leading national democrats. The first one is from Professor Wincenty Lutosławski. The Lutosławski family was extremely close to the leader of national democracy, Roman Dmowski. In fact, Roman Dmowski died at Drozdów, outside of Łomża, which was the estate of the Lutosławski family. And here's what, in June 1939, Professor Wincenty Lutosławski had to say about what constitutes a Pole. Who is a Pole? This is what he said. They belong to the Polish nation, Polonized Germans, Tatars, Armenians, Gypsies, Jews, if they live for the common ideal of Poland. A black man or a redskin can also become a real Pole if he absorbs the heritage, the spiritual heritage of the Polish nation as reflected by its literature, art, politics, customs, and if he has an unbreakable will of contributing to the development of the national life of the Poles. Now, this is not Adolf Hitler, ladies and gentlemen, but that is entirely gone from so-called scholarship, which has been dominated by communists, post-communists, and various liberals. Obviously, if you write about Christian nationalism, you must take Christian nationalists on their own terms, learn what they had to say, do not rely on communist propaganda. Okay, so that's Professor Ludosławski, a leading Endek intellectual. And here's Adam Doboszyński. Adam Doboszyński was a friend of my family, an engineer by training, a formidable intellectual, a student and friend of Chesterton. Adam Doboszyński returned to Poland in 1946 surreptitiously to prevail upon the insurgents to blend into the population or escape to the West, for he said the United States and England and other allied countries had betrayed Poland and they weren't going to help. So there was no sense shooting at the communists anymore, just as they had against the Nazis. In any event, Adam Doboszyński wrote in his last statement before leaving Munich in 1947, Poland had to wait 1,000 years for the appearance of a slogan that the Rzeczpospolita, the Republic, the Commonwealth, should only be inhabited solely by the Poles. This slogan was promoted and realized only by the Soviet Agentura, the agents of the Soviets. We shall never find a trace of this slogan in any of the Polish thinkers. Now, Doboszyński was the most prominent intellectual of the young orientation within Polish Christian nationalism. I won't read the whole book to you. I just wanted to make a point. I'm telling you that when Polish Christian nationalists said Poland for the Poles, they meant anybody who felt Polish. In the darkest days of the Nazi occupation, they found time to polemicize about things like, we're going to honor Jews who are Polish patriots. These are the most extreme of nationalist radicals, because they thought Nazism was a pagan, materialist, racist ideology which they rejected, for they were Christians. And this was not for show. You can find plenty of tidbits that were so politically incorrect that only I can read and quote. That is entirely gone from any historical monograph, and there are hardly any. This is one of the first ones. The National Democrats found time in 1942 to jump at each other's throats because one underground, bless you, Gesundheit, whichever one applies, one underground editor besmirched Polish Lutherans as potential fifth column for the Germans, for the Nazis. So in the following issues of the Rampart, which was a nationalist radical publication, other editors jumped at his throat saying, some of the best Polish patriots are Lutheran. And they're also part of our movement, which is true. For instance, Lieutenant Stanisław Jojte, who had lost his leg in defense of Poland in 1939, was the head of the most formidable and successful spy network within the Third Reich itself. Those are the people who discovered the V1 weapon in its lair, which was bombed, thanks to their information, by the Allied Air Force into the smithereens. In any event, the picture that emerges from research in original sources makes stereotypes look stupid. And to conclude, I would like to read a little bit to you. A friend of mine, as I was writing this book with two other authors, my students, Jola Mysiakowska-Muszyńska and Wojtek Muszyński, they're both PhDs in Poland at the Institute of National Remembrance. So as I was writing this book, I would quote to a very good friend of mine, who's not here, unfortunately, with us. I would quote to him from the book, and he said, "This sounds awfully familiar." And then he comes up with the following quote. "In the first place, we should insist that if the immigrant who comes here in good faith becomes an American and assimilates himself to us, he shall be treated on an exact equality with everyone else. For it is an outrage to discriminate against any such man because of his creed, of birthplace or origin. But this is predicated upon the person's becoming in every facet an American and nothing but an American. There can be no divided allegiance here. Any man who says he is an American but something else also isn't an American at all. We have room for but one flag, the American flag. We have room for but one language here, and that is the English language. And we have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is a loyalty to the American people." Theodore Roosevelt, 1907. Precisely the same sentiment. No racism, no chauvinism. Inclusiveness. You come, and you're one of us. You don't give a damn about this country? We'll kick your butt. We'll kick you out of here. Because it's a common project, a commonwealth, a republic, a respublika. That's what it is. And with this chauvinistic remark, I now shall yield the floor to a couple of questions. Go ahead. No questions? Great, we can then. Okay.
I'm not a Polish specialist. I have more of an encyclopedia knowledge, although I was once a student of Piotr Bondage. But he was teaching
at
all
Yale.
of Eastern Europe, not just Poland.
Yes.
I understand that President Narutowicz was assassinated in 1922 because extreme nationalists resented the fact that ethnic and religious minorities provided his margin of victory. Could you fill us in a little bit on the particulars?
Yes, the assassin, Eligiusz Niewiadomski, was a great-grand-uncle of one of the authors, Wojtek Muszyński. What else? The atmosphere was poisonous. Poland regained her independence. The candidate of the majority party, the largest party in Poland, was the Count Zamoyski, who had single-handedly bankrolled the Polish diplomatic effort in the West. He was the main cash cow. He also had been always a conservative rather than a nationalist force in Polish politics, an extremely formidable and admirable individual. And he had the majority of the Polish votes, except the left. And the minorities, to stick it to the main orientation, the National Democrats, voted for a decent unknown, Eligiusz Narutowicz, who became president. By the way, Narutowicz's first cousin, whose name was Narutowicz, but he changed it to Narutowaitis was the first president of Lithuania. They were Polish nobility, educated. So, once the left and the minorities, that included Aguda Israel, which was expected to support the Count Zamoyski. Aguda Israel was an ultra-Orthodox party, voted with the left. Many on the right found it offensive. I would too. This guy was a dude from nowhere because Piłsudski didn't want to run. Had Piłsudski run, that would have been a different story. But you find a non-entity just because you want to spite the majority orientation. I am not surprised at the anger, and I condemned. I don't understand why Eligiusz Niewiadomski decided, and his few friends decided that it was a good idea to shoot that non-entity. No idea. But it was horrible. First act in independent Poland that reverberated through her, poisoned the atmosphere of the interwar period, and also gave Poland a black eye abroad. You see, everybody remembers Eligiusz Niewiadomski, and everybody remembers President Narutowicz, but nobody remembers that when the Poles voted for the first time, 1918, 1919, the women voted. And most of the women voted National Democrat. They were some of the most formidable activists on the right, Christian nationalist right. Women voted. Poland got an 8-hour working day. It was all in congruence with the program of not just socialists, but National Democrats. People like Cegielski, people like Wedel, Welisz, and others were all conservatives or nationalist Christians, and they treated their workers decently. So when the communists arrived in Poland in 44, 45, entered the Wedel works and said, hey, you're going to have a preschool. We got a preschool in 1880. What the heck are you talking about? Hey, you will get an 8-hour working day. We've had that for a very long time. You see, all of this has disappeared into the collective memory hole caused by communist censorship. But the only thing one remembers is this horrible, horrible assassination, and you don't remember anything else. Nobody in Poland either. Everybody says, oh, Narutowicz. Nothing else. Nobody remembers that the Poles were able, mostly of the right, to assemble 3 systems, 3 partitioning systems, 5 various economic systems. They codified the law. For instance, nobody remembers Karol Welisz. You know who he was? A National Democrat, a friend of Dmowski, of Jewish origin, who codified Poland's treasury law. This was a formidable task after 1918. But no, everybody says, oh yes, the index shot Narutowicz. That's a great success of selective memory and the left and Professor Vanditch. In any event.
Actually, he never mentioned that incident in his lectures.
Really?
I just got it out of the encyclopedia.
I knew about Narutowicz from when I was about 8 years old, because every year we'd go on the Hallow Eve to clean graves, lay flowers, and put up candles for our family, and we'd always walk by the grave of Eligiusz Niewiadomski, who was a painter, an artist. And my family would tell me the story behind him. Why was his grave cleaned? Why would people put flowers on it? That's because they remembered him some people remembered him as a patriot. In Poznań, after the president was assassinated, and Poznań was staunchly National Democrat, they had his pictures in the store fronts. to commemorate the great sacrifice of the assassin, not pictures of Narutowicz. This was symbolic. It was horrible. Well, and I thought to myself, what an idiot would do it. By the same token, my foster father, when he was 19 in Lvov, a student at the Lvov Polytechnic, wanted to assassinate Prime Minister Bartel. Fortunately, after he got himself a gun, he went to confess, and his father confessor said, Mój Boże, my God, what is this? So my foster father never went through with the plan. Eligiusz Niewiadomski was a professor of art history, so he was not a 19-year-old. I have no idea what causes people, and we should observe really a moment of silence today, because Califatist terrorist murdered 128 people in France yesterday in 6 lightning strikes. What's behind that? I have no idea. In my world, we don't touch women, children, and non-combatants. We fight with spears, swords, and bows and arrows. Of course, we enjoy modern medicine. That's how war should be, if there must be war. But I hate war. Anyway, see, this was for the benefit of a generalist. Yes, Mr. Chop. We have half a minute.
I was browsing through Great Men and Women of Poland, edited by Stefan Jerzba, founder of the Kościuszko Foundation.
Yes.
And in the course of doing so, I came across in one of the chapters the observation. I forget the author of the chapter's name, that Eliusz Niewiadomski was mentally unbalanced. Is there any truth to that?
He was an artist. Artists are in touch with God. And I'm not joking. They operate at a different level. They are in touch with emotion. So, have you ever seen a grown guy cry?
Yeah.
I have in the movies. It's just weird for me. But I'm not an artist. I can't do stuff like this. So, my wife calls me a robot. Anyway, I don't think he was clinically insane. There is no record of him being taking a treatment. He just reacted emotionally, and he drove. I think they had a little cabal, an autonomous cabal, and he was stopped. They all drew straws, and he drew a short one. That's one story. But anyway, there you go. You see what you do? It's all reduced to Eligiusz Niewiadomski and President Narutowicz.